The scripture lessons today are from Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 through 31, and then Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 through 21. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. And the second reading. Now when Jesus heard him, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. This ends the readings.
Do we ever have enough? What really is enough? You know, Jacob never had enough. First of all, he asked his brother for his birthright for a bowl of soup. And then he asked for his dad to bless him, pretending to be his brother, lying to his father. And now it was time for him to go back to his homeland. He had escaped. He knew he had kind of not made some friends. So on the way back, he's wrestling by the river there, and it's never really clear with whom he is wrestling. And at the end, he asked yet for another blessing. The being says, "Let go of me, we're done here." "Nope, not till you bless me. I want a blessing." Jacob always gets what he wants, that little scoundrel. But is it enough? It wasn't enough to take his brother's birthright. It wasn't enough to pretend to be his brother to get his father's blessing. And it wasn't enough to win the match with the person with whom he was wrestling. He had to have yet another blessing. And in some ways, the disciples were the exact same way. Jesus had gone to get away. He's trying to get away from the crowds, to have some time, some peace and quiet. And what did they do? They all followed him. So he had to continue teaching and preaching. And it came time for dinner, And the disciples are like, get them out of here. Tell them to go home and get some food. And Jesus is like, you feed them. You take care of this. But we don't have enough. Look how many there are. We have 12 loaves, a couple pieces of bread, we have some fish. There's not enough. Just like, give it to me. And Jesus did his thing. And the next thing you know, everybody ate. Everybody was fed. And just like Christmas dinner, there were leftovers. How much is enough? How many times have you yourself or your mother or your grandmother's, my house it was always the women except for now, you worry about whether or not you have enough food. You're having the family over, oh, I won't have enough food, I better get a bigger ham. Oh, I better make another side dish, we're not gonna have enough food. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, you're still eating leftovers? We had enough food. How much is enough? You know, I've even heard a few comments about our blessing box. Is there enough? You see people taking stuff out of there. Well, yeah. I think that's why we put it there, so people would take stuff out of there. And maybe it is some kids, and maybe it is people we don't know, but isn't that kind of the point? If somebody needs a bottle of water, it's there for them. If somebody wants a box of cereal, it's there for them. Do we have enough? Yeah, we have enough. We always have enough. Jacob had enough, but it was never enough for him. He wanted so badly to marry Rachel, but his father said, no, you got to marry Leah first. She's the oldest one, and you got to work for me for 7 years. Then you can have Rachel. He finally got Rachel. Again, he got what he wanted. We can get what we want and what we ask for, but then aren't we back to that place of asking for more? Oh, I got this one. Now what I want. Now what I need. And do we know the difference between what we want and what we need? It seems unlikely that Jesus was able to feed 5,000 people. Oh, no, sorry, 5,000 men, plus women and children. Seriously. And my kids wanted me to go see Barbie to talk about patriarchy. Really? I've read the Bible. I know patriarchy. Trust me. But it seems unlikely that a few loaves of bread and a few fish would feed that many people. But do you really think everybody came out with nothing to eat if they were journeying? Do you think they came completely unprepared? Have you ever noticed that when we come together and somebody offers something, somebody else offers something, and then somebody else, oh, I've got this. All of a sudden there's abundance because we know how to share. We know how to take care of one another. We may not always do it well, but we know how. There's enough. There is enough. And for most of us, there is more than enough. And that's why we can do things like make a meal once a month for those in need. That's why we can do things like have a blessing box so people can take what they need when they need it. And that's why we can do these things without worrying about the next time, will there be enough? There's enough right now, right here. And we will replenish. We will replenish. Jesus will find that place to get away and pray so that he can replenish. And he will continue to feed and tell stories and nurture. We can give out of our surplus. We can give out of all that we have. And we will find a way to replenish. Why do we come here on a Sunday morning? We come to replenish so we can go back out and feed the thousands. Because we know it's not a question of whether or not there's enough. It's a question of how we're going to share our abundance so that everyone can be fed. We're going to come to this table today and we're going to have enough. We're going to have more than enough. Because it's not just about the bread and the cup. It's about encountering the risen Christ and knowing that we are going to be blessed in this meal. That in our eating and our drinking, we will be filled and replenished so we can go out and be enough for the rest of the world. We are enough. It's not just a question of whether or not we have enough. We are enough. Why? Because we were created in God's image. And that right there is enough. Each and every one of us created in the image of God to be enough for this world in which we live. Thanks be to God. Amen.